in Pakistan, one comment that sums up the view of the majority here about the Kerry-Lugar bill is that it's an instrument of surrender.
It doesn't surprise me because, again, I don't think that American officials who are putting together this bill, our elected officials, were aware of how sensitive some of these issues were, and that's because Ambassador Haqqani didn't tell them. And frankly, I don't think Ambassador Haqqani himself has a very good feel for the feelings on the Pakistani street. I don't think he's very in touch with the masses, and I hate to say it, but I don't think this present government is very in touch with the feelings of the masses. So what you had was a lot of stuff in here that really was not going to fly with the Pakistani people, especially the stuff with regard to nuclear. And I'd also add that I think he's done a very poor job informing officials. I've been shocked in talking to Americans at how much incorrect information they still have about what happened, the exact specifics of what happened with AQ Khan and various aspects of the Pakistani nuclear program. For a guy who's a university professor, he's a teacher. He needed to be teaching them, and he didn't do it.
How do you explain, Thomas, the fact that senior U.S. officials in interactions with senior Pakistani officials who were in New York just a couple of weeks back did not mention Quetta, Balochistan, the possible presence of Mullah Omar or some bin Laden there, but we're seeing some very respectable news organizations, both in Britain and the United States now, publishing reports about the existence and building up pressure on this point. I don't know. I hate to use the word and go toward conspiracy theories that somebody's leaking this stuff. How would you explain this, that you have these reports coming out, unsourced, do not quote any U.S. official, but are very specific and very threatening, and on the other hand, the U.S. officials themselves, frankly, in their interactions, even in their private interactions with Pakistani officials, don't mention any of this. What's going on?
Well, I've been upset with the way diplomacy's been handled. I think there's been a complete lack of frankness. I think Pakistani officials who visit here meet their American counterparts and then go back to Pakistan thinking everything's fine, and when everything's not fine, when in many cases the Americans haven't been satisfied with the answers that they've been getting. I think there is, and I think part of the distrust of the Pakistani army is warranted. I think you have a lot of officials in the United States government wondering exactly why General Kiani let things get so out of hand in the Northwest Frontier Province before he finally acted. And I'll tell you, my personal view is the only reason he acted was because he started wondering about whether or not military aid was going to be cut over the issue. He had to be dragged into Northwest Frontier Province kicking and screaming. And that's the view over here, and that's the view I share. So whenever Americans see threats, they tend to be very distrustful about the willingness of the Pakistani army to go and deal with those threats.
Right.
Now, of course, there's another situation where Americans don't understand how sensitive things are in Quetta because, the Pakistani army's been in that area before, and there are still a lot of residual hard feelings, so it has to tread carefully. But again, this hasn't been explained to American officials, and it should have been.
Thomas, my very last point, just regarding what you mentioned about General Kiani and the Northwest and the operations there, there's something that even Ambassador Patterson alluded to, and that is the difference in perception. The Pakistani military and a lot of people here believe that the threat to Pakistan is really the extremist groups here and not the Afghan Taliban, which is the primary concern of the U.S. military and the U.S. government. So there's a disconnect. If the Pakistani military is going to go and do military operations in our northwest of the tribal belt, it'll primarily be against extremists and terrorists attacking Pakistan and not Afghan Taliban sympathizers who are really more concerned about Afghanistan, which is not a priority for Pakistan.
Well, I mean, but again, look at the way it's looked at over here. What our people are thinking is, my God, they won't even fight people who are a threat to their own nation. how are we going to get them to fight people who are a threat vis-a-vis Afghanistan?
Yeah.
And that's where it comes back to that point. Again, it's these matters of distrust. If people would do it the way Shah Mahmoud Qureshi did it when he came over here, I have no problem saying he was a sensation. The first time he came over here, he was very, very frank, and I think American officials found him very refreshing. But we don't have frank talk going on and between our governments at the highest levels. So what you get are people at lower levels leaking stuff left and right in support of what they view as the real story.
Strange. Well, I thought we didn't need to really have Foreign Minister Qureshi going and creating that kind of sensation, because Ambassador Haqqani was supposed to do that.
Yeah, well, he hasn't. I mean, there are two completely different approaches there, and I just don't think Haqqani's approach is effective. I think he's working hard, but I don't think he's accomplishing a lot.
Thomas Ulan, thank you very much for joining us from Washington, D.C.
Thank you. Have a good one.
We'll discuss this, and we'll come back to the evidence that you have, which is, again, breaking news. मुझे पता है कि आप इसको यानी कि you've been right after it, and you've been creating ripples and upsetting a lot of people. After this quick break.